I'm Lizzie Pollett, Acast's VP of Brand. I'm here with Georgie Holt, our Managing Director for the UK.
Hello.
A little later, we're going to be hearing from some of the biggest podcasters in the UK. We have Chris and Rosie Ramsey from Shagged, Married, Annoyed, as well as Poppy and Rubina from Brown Girls Do It Too. Both podcasts actually recently cleaned up at the British Podcast Awards. And then you're also going to be hearing more about great shows we have coming up on Acast later this year. But first, Georgie and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Acast and how we are moving the industry forward. So, Georgie, you joined Acast right at the start of lockdown. We've never actually been in an office together.
I have not been in the office with you yet, LP. This is the first time I've met you in person.
But what attracted you to podcasting and Acast specifically?
I mean, quite simply, Acast is the world's biggest podcasting company globally. So it was just such a thrill to join the business and an industry which is in such fast growth, and Acast really is at the vanguard of that. I'm also getting to work with some seriously talented people as well, who are working with and monetizing some of the biggest podcasts in the world that are on the Acast network, from incredible publishers like The Guardian, The FT, The Times and The Economist, and household names such as Chris and Rosie Ramsey, John Bishop, Catherine Ryan, Ramesh Ranganathan and Jessie Ware. The only way for brands to connect with these podcasts and the incredibly engaged audiences that listen to them every day is through the Acast Marketplace, which allows brands to connect with all of these shows through direct and automated access. And we really are the home of podcast buying globally. What else is so important to me, and I know it's so important to you too, LP, is Acast's commitment to the open ecosystem.
Yeah, we often talk about part of our mission is helping as many storytellers as possible find as big an audience as possible. So, we are massive advocates at Acast of the open ecosystem, which means that, our podcasters can have their shows listened to on any platform or any app, but also for advertisers, it means they're getting access to our over 13,000 shows globally, and they can meet those audiences wherever they are listening to podcasts. So, yeah, it's incredibly important for us as well.
I mean, what word comes up when we're talking about podcasts all the time at Acast is the word community. And every single show of ours has an incredibly loyal community. And I think over the last few months, we've really come to understand what community means and why it's so important. And to feel part of one, wherever you are, even via your favourite podcast. And I think for brands too, to kind of understand that podcasts are an incredible way to reach communities, which is incredibly vital if you want to build a community around your own product, platform or narrative. Podcasts are such an effective and trusted space to do this. We see stats like 76% of people who listen to a podcast take action from the ads that they hear, which is just incredible. And to that end, we kind of think about our podcast as the best kind of influencers. They're trusted tastemakers with loyal fans, and aligning your brand with a podcast is literally the best word of mouth strategy you could get. There is nothing else that comes close.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pandemic there, of course, so it would be remiss of us not to just talk about, how we have found the last 6 months, has that affected us? What's it meant for podcasting?
I mean, podcasting has emerged as an even more vital medium, not just for audiences, but also for advertisers. And we've seen continued growth in both our effectiveness in ad campaigns and the audiences that come to podcasts every single day. And we've seen the biggest numbers of listens globally at Acast since the beginning of lockdown. We've actually seen a record number of listens in the UK. In July, we had 52 million listens alone in that month, which is just extraordinary. And it isn't just about the scale and it isn't about the effectiveness, it's also about the speed and flexibility of this medium too. We can also turn around campaigns in just 24 hours. So as brands are adjusting to the news landscape that's dominating our world right now and they need to tweak an ad message, they can absolutely do that with podcasts. I just don't think there's any other medium that comes close to that right now that can also deliver high trust and high reach.
Absolutely. And just looking forward as well, I think that's really important. Something I want to talk about is I feel so lucky to work in podcasting because it's such a vital platform to give a platform to underrepresented voices. And at Acast, so we have made lots of strides in this area. So last summer we launched A-Class, which is our series of masterclasses for underrepresented voices as well. We were really proud to sign the Equality in Audio Pact that's been set up by some of our partners in the industry this summer. It's so important. And then we're also currently working on a great programme looking at how we connect some of our biggest podcasts in the world with some of the other shows which deserve a much bigger audience in terms of promotional activity. So I'm really looking forward to what we've got coming up in the next sort of 6 months, I suppose, in that space.
And for us, in the advertising perspective, there are so many great things coming up. I've really only got time to talk about two, so I'm going to talk about two of the most important things coming up. One is keyword targeting. This is going to allow advertisers to identify keywords and phrases that are most important to their brand and be able to build a podcast campaign from that. So they're going to be using AI targeting to not only identify the word, but to also understand the sentiment that's being used around that topic, so they're not aligning with anything negative. And it's going to be such a game changer to build contextual advertising campaigns within podcasts, because we've seen stats like 42% higher engagement from contextual ads and up to twice the ad recall. So we're so excited that Acast is going to be bringing this to the industry. The other really cool thing we're doing right now is a virtual storefront on Acast, which is essentially building a completely self-serve planning, booking tool for advertisers and clients and agencies. And this is going to be allowing them to, first and foremost, the way we started it is to plan a campaign to access and take advantage of the thousands of shows that are currently on the Acast network. The next step of that is to actually not only plan the campaign, but reserve the ad slots, book the ad slots, upload the audio and set the campaign live. So it's going to be a really seamless, automated experience for all of our advertisers and a real game changer.
We're not going to be bored. There is a lot going on. Oh, well, thank you so much, Georgie. It's been so
Pleasure.
lovely to talk about everything we've got going on. But next, you are going to hear from 4 of the biggest podcasters in the country. So we have Chris and Rosie Ramsey of Shagged, Married and Poppy and Rubina from Brown Girls Do It Too. And as one of the biggest smars in the country, I'm delighted to say, take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Lizzie. Yes, I am Chris Ramsey from Shagged, Married and it is lovely to be here with our wonderful friends at Acast, with my wife Rosie from Shagged, Married with Poppy and Rubina from Brown Girls Do It Too, to discuss why podcasts are just so brilliant. That's why we're here.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
So obviously, Rosie, you are my wife. You're from Shagged, Married Say
for
hello.
my sins, yes.
For my sins?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, straight in there. And we have Poppy and Rubina from the award-winning...
Woo! Oh my God, I didn't get the award. Why didn't I get the award?
For the people who haven't listened to our podcast yet, would you like to tell people a little bit about what you're... I mean, it's Brown Girls Do It Too. I think we've all got an idea. But would you like to give a little summarise of what's about?
Sure. So it's a 6-part podcast series about the wonderful thing that is sex. I know.
My God!
But I guess we use it as a prism to talk about all sorts of things like race and class and gender.
Yeah.
But it's really about like dirty sex and how sex can sometimes be unsexy and hairy and disgusting. And
We're not sexperts at any point. In fact, every third episode there's a disclaimer saying, "Don't try this at home." Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
And it's I listen back to it and it sounds like I'm sort of taken back to like 3 16-year-olds having a little giggle.
Yeah.
And being funny, and I don't think that we are worthy or preachy, but and also when you look at the best sex and relationship category, there's loads of podcasts in the sex and relationship genre. I don't think ours was innovative in that sense, but I think in our community, because we don't talk about sex at all. I know no one talks about sex, but we really don't talk about it, and we're almost ashamed of it. To do it, I think, in the way that we did. I mean, there were moments where Rubina was like, "I can't say this," and I'm like, "Say it."
You very much sound like the instigator for a lot of the podcast.
There were definitely moments where, because I think the listeners were finding out our sex stories as we were discovering things about ourselves. So, in that sense, it was. It was real magic in the studio. And also we thought 6 people would listen to it, we'd put it on our CV, say we'd done a podcast, cool,
We
move
thought
on.
the same.
Yeah.
We thought the same.
Really?
Just weren't prepared for the power of podcasts at all.
No, we had no idea. We started out, it was very much like, let's just try this. And we naively said, let's try this because I don't think many people listen to podcasts.
We were so naive about it, yeah.
Little did we
really
know.
were. Acast like to use the word community when talking about podcasts. I'd prefer cult with ours. Ours are, they're intense, they're amazing. But yeah, they're out there. So we all did well at the British Podcast Awards. You guys won best sex and relationship?
Sex and relationship,
Best sex and relationships. And then didn't you win an overall award?
We won the best overall podcast.
Best overall podcast. Best
That's
podcast.
unbelievable.
Take the word overall out of there. That's best
That's what I
podcast.
said. You changed
Best
that
podcast.
twice now. It's
Yeah.
best. You got the best.
You've
podcast.
added like a modesty word into there.
Yeah.
Overall, best
Overall,
podcast.
it was okay. It was fine.
And we won listener's choice because, like you said, we now lead a cult. Weirdly, a fact here: Acast podcast scooped 15 of the 25 gold awards, which
That
is
is
amazing.
amazing,
What are your thoughts on British podcasting and the stories people are telling out there? What other things are you listening to and enjoying, really?
It's kind of amazing how broad British podcasting is and all the kind of niche storytelling that can happen. You've got like Table Manners or Homo Sapiens or Receipts. It's like people are really like tapping into their like niche communities and able just to talk.
Or cults, niche cults.
Yeah, niche
Yeah,
cults, yeah.
yeah.
And once you've got your following, it's just amazing how deep you can go into it because you can sit there and just like get to know these people for a really long period of time. I think there's like the British podcasting scene has like recently exploded in a way that like we're catching up with the Americans at like a really fast speed.
I agree.
And I also think podcasts give different cults and communities opportunities in a way I don't think TV did really. I mean, you have I May Destroy You, but in terms of like sharing the narrative and the alternative perspective, I just don't think TV takes as many risks. So podcast definitely gives a platform for everyone to have their own cult, and you can tap into those communities and you can go deep and you can touch, you know, it can be superficial. I think there's much more scope as well.
Yeah, you can get away with a lot more as well,
Yeah,
can't
you can. Yeah.
No, well, I worked in radio before we did the podcast, and when we did the podcast, I loved it, didn't I? I was like, we can just talk about whatever we want, and there's no rules, and it's just, and personally, that's why I listen to podcasts, because you really, they get right in there, and it's just so.
Rosie used to come back from, we'll not name the radio station, but Rosie used to come back from working in the radio and be like, they say don't talk about this and they say don't talk about that. And then one time you talked about what was, when you get someone on the back of your bike when you're a kid and someone sits on the seat and you pedal.
Yeah.
We call that a backer.
Backer.
Right?
A backer.
What do you call that?
See,
Backseat.
the reason I like
Backseat.
Yeah.
We need to start putting a bit of Geordie in it.
One time on the radio, Rosie and our co-host put that out and it like went huge.
Yeah.
But the radio, the bosses were like, you don't talk about stuff like that. And we sat down and realised within the first couple of episodes of our podcast, all the stuff we were talking about that the listeners were really engaging with and emailing in was all the stuff the radio had told her not to talk about. And it was like, don't talk about mundane things. People want to know, like, you know what I mean, the ins and outs of stuff, like what people wouldn't. I mean, you definitely couldn't talk about what you guys talk about on radio. But
But sex isn't talked about a lot.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
And it's so
there's similarities between our podcasts. I mean, ours is more horror stories.
Yeah.
And they're not ours, thank God.
But I love how you take the mundane and the sort of everyday activities of life or conversations, and you two are absolute who. I'd be like, definitely want to have a drink with them in the pub.
Everyone says that. We're actually very boring in real life. Very
We are
boring.
so boring in real life, but for that hour at the kitchen table, we are superstars.
Cool.
But
Cool dudes.
it's the engagement, and it's so I've done stand-up for years and I've done TV shows, and the rule seems to always be that producers always put across is, and this is the sweeping generalisation, but they always say that you can't really rely on the audience to give you too much stuff. It's like you need to have stuff prepared. You can't rely on the audience to give you great content. Our emails, we've
all
got
from the
20,000 emails sitting in our inbox, just all stories from the public. And it's that level of engagement. It's how they get involved. Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's
great. What was your reaction from the public? Well, how did you find it within your community as well? Did you find it really, really good?
Well, it was definitely mixed.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Really?
not many brown women go on air to talk about anything, and when they do, they get a lot of disses. I mean, if you're a woman on the internet in general, you kind of get trolled to
Yeah,
shit.
knackered, yeah.
So we had a lot of that to kick off with, and then we had like loads of creepy guys being like, "Hey,
What is your name?" And I'm like, piss off. Oh, you fit though. I'm joking. So we did get our fair share.
Can I just say I'm still really annoyed you told me to piss off when I sent you that.
I think also this is something that we've said this in our interviews, like I really do feel like the stakes were a bit higher for us in terms of family and pressure and reputation.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fine now, they're talking to me now. But there's 6 of them and we're in a WhatsApp. Can you imagine, like, by the way, I'm doing a sex podcast. So I wanted to speak to them one-on-one individually, give them time. You know, they were like, they've been
we
sharing.
also had like this incredible wave of other people who were
That's
like,
what we're more interested in.
yeah, I know, we're like everyone fucking hated us, but no, that's not what happened. Like we had
But I
like
think it's what you're doing is really important.
Yeah.
Because there'll be so many women and men who will be listening and they'll be like, oh gosh, we can talk about this and it's okay. And
Yeah.
I think it's great.
yeah, we had loads of nice like young women, men contacting us, people in America, people like all across
What's
the
the
UK
one that you got
contacting us.
from the Mauritius person?
Oh yeah, someone was like, I'm going to send this to my suppressed cousins in Mauritius so they can like get on board. People just like are sharing it like really rapidly. Actually, the word of mouth
And
for our
that's the
podcast
beauty
is
of it.
probably like the thing that
That's
took
because
it.
it's on someone's phone, it's on their device,
Yeah.
it's straight into
Yeah.
their ears. And that's the thing with doing stand-up and telly for years, you don't build the same kind of audience that you do with a podcast. It's blown my mind.
So we've recently started doing ads with Acast on our podcast. And so far they've gone down really, really well.
Yeah.
We're really enjoying it because it kind of, you can put a little bit extra of the podcast into an ad without making it sound like an ad, because it's Chris and I's voices usually, instead of, you know, somebody who people don't know.
Like that guy, the fast-talking guy coming in with all the terms and conditions apply. Like, you don't need him. Like,
We
you
had
can
to
it
do that on
yourself.
one of them, and you were very
I did get to do
excited.
one. I was very excited. I had to say terms and conditions apply, and I did it really quick. That was a bucket list check off for me.
But we've advertised some amazing brands. One thing I really liked as well from ads, because some people do not like adverts, and that's fine. It's part and parcel of it. And I listen to loads of podcasts with adverting. But I actually, the first time since we started doing ads on the podcast, I get tweets of people who have listened to the ad and bought the thing that we've been advertising.
Success,
And
that's what they want.
But I've never known that. I've never, ever experienced that until we started doing them on the podcast. And I'm like, oh, people listen to that bit and they've bought it, or they've used a discount code, or they've done like a
Well,
swipe
in the past,
or
I've
something.
bought loads of stuff from podcasts I've listened to. So then when we started doing it, I thought, well, that just makes sense, yeah.
And it feels really honest, doesn't it? Like you're telling your listeners, hey, we are using ads. It feels really like straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as it's our show, we choose. You get a choice of what you want to advertise and what you don't want to advertise. So most podcasts, I think, it's a genuine thing that the podcasters will
you don't want
use.
to, because it is such a community cult with the audience, you don't want to sort of sell anything to them that you wouldn't have yourself, or advertise anything to them, or kind of cheat them or dupe them in any way. You want to go, this is a good thing, this would be good for you if you like the stuff we like, kind of thing. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Hand it over to Christiana from Acast.
Thank you so much, Chris, Rosie, Poppy and Rubina. We're so incredibly grateful to have you here with us today. But now, in our last section for today, Leo and I are going to take you through a whistle-stop tour of some of our great new shows in 2020 and beyond. Leo, always such an ambitious task in less than 5 minutes, so let's get straight into it. What's new in the wonderful world of podcasting?
Well, Christiana, thank you. It's no secret that some of the biggest podcasts in the world follow an interview format. So I'm incredibly excited to say that the king of the interview, Jeremy Paxman himself, is starting a podcast with Acast.
And, of course, we also have Patricia Bright joining us for the second season of a really unique finance and personal development podcast, Caught Off Guard. Now, Patricia is such a huge influencer for us, and is another example of this really, really exciting trend we're seeing of more influencers flocking to the podcasting space and bringing with them their engaged community of listeners.
Absolutely, and we're seeing that in the comedy space as well, with John Bishop, one of Britain's biggest stand-up comedians, starting a new show. We've also got the Joe Marler Show. Joe is such a big sports personality, and I've listened to a few of the clips of this podcast. I urge you all to tune in when it releases soon, because it sounds like it's going to be so funny.
I couldn't agree more. And both these shows join us from the brand new Manchester Crowd Network. And we were lucky enough to meet this team a couple of weeks ago, and they are so incredibly passionate about creating great content. And they bring with it a really interesting new slate of really popular US formats into the UK. So I do highly recommend people trial that along at home.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant to see this regional diversity coming through with more producers based outside of London. And to go with that, we've got Open Goal as well, joining Acast, the biggest sports podcast in Scotland with 120,000 listens each week. We've also got Melissa Reddy's new show. Let me tell you how excited I am about this. She is the most exciting young sports journalist in England, full stop. And she's launching a new show called Between the Lines, which is coming out soon.
I've been lucky enough to hear a few early snippets of this one, actually, and I think that Melissa may even give the Ramble Boys a run for their money.
It's funny you should say that. She's actually joining as part of their network and becoming a regular pundit on the Football Ramble Daily, which is brilliant news for them and for her. And it's so great to see our podcasters collaborate in this way.
Of course, I always welcome more female voices into the podcasting sporting genre as well. And now we've been lucky enough to feature them here today. But of course, this year we also welcome with very wide open, warm arms, Chris and Rosie Ramsey from Shagged, Married, Annoyed. A show so big, so entertaining that we were lucky enough to welcome a brand new advertiser, one of the most premium global brands in the world, in Apple TV+. And this compliments, of course, Catherine Ryan, a very, very familiar face to us. But we welcomed her new podcast, Telling Everyone Everything. These two titles, of course, just complement our existing slate of huge, giant comedic shows and really do help to reaffirm our position, Leo, as the home of UK British podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's easy to forget that My Dad Wrote a Porno, the smash hit comedy show, started in a pub with just Jamie reading his dad's book. So there's very low barrier to entry in podcasting, which is what makes it such a great medium. What else have we got that bolsters representation?
It's such an interesting point, and certainly one that Georgie and LP nodded to earlier, but our commitment to diversity and bringing the whole entire industry forward in this space, particularly supporting diverse creators who are so incredibly vital to the podcast ecosystem. And with that, this year we're incredibly proud to welcome the Pink Protest Network by author, influencer and activist Scarlett Curtis. It's a breakthrough network bringing together really exciting titles like Feminists Don't Wear Pink, The Body Protest, football, feminism and everything in between, bringing up us. And this also complements a series of other independents like Amalia, the UK's foremost online publication for and by Muslim women, Black Ballad, the platform for stories through the eyes of Black British women, Growing Up with Galdem, of course, the breakthrough publication for women and non-binary people of colour, and finally On Things We Left Behind, of course, Acast's very own LaunchPod competition winners, exploring the hidden afterlife after war. I, for one, Leo, am very, very excited to listen and learn from these exciting new titles.
And of course, it would be remiss of us to sit here and talk about content without talking about the big 5 publishers
Absolutely.
in the UK, The Guardian, The Economist, The FT, The Times and the BBC. These guys together produce over 1,000 podcasts, which is absolutely incredible in terms of scale. And they continue to invest and develop the space. And in 2018, The Guardian started Today in Focus, which was the first of a journalistic daily update format podcast. Since then, we've seen the FT News Briefing. We've seen Stories of Our Times by The Times. We've seen The Intelligence by The Economist. They continue to push the medium forward with Wireless Studio producing The Times Briefing and TalkSport Hit, 2 more daily format shows. What's so exciting is to see other genres adopt and push this forward as well. We now have daily history from Dan Snow's History Hit. We've got daily football from the Football Ramble Daily. We've got daily politics from The Bunker. We've got daily quizzes from Quiz Chat Repeat coming out soon. We've even got daily poetry and comedy from the Rob Orton Daily, which recently picked up a gold in the British Podcast Awards. So what's really exciting is seeing this development occur firsthand and giving brands more opportunity and seeing the whole medium push itself forward and become more dynamic.
More content, more genres, more often. I'm certainly not going to argue with that. Feels like a perfect place to, unfortunately, close our session at the IAB Upfronts. As you can see, there's so much opportunity available in the world of content. And for us, and thanks to our incredible Acast creative team, content is really just the beginning. It's the evolution of our brand partnerships and the creativity we've seen evolve across the past 12 months, particularly sponsor reads and now 3D immersive audio ad formats, social, long-form branded content. It's these integration opportunities that, as you know, personally excite me each and every day. So if you feel inspired, please do reach out to your local Acast rep or contact the Acast UK sales team, believe the emails on your screen, or why not browse our new storefront for the Acast Marketplace, where you can browse all of our many thousands and thousands of titles online right now. Again, I believe the URL is on your screen. Well, thank you so much, Leo, and thank you to all of our contributors and, of course, the IAB. Certainly hope that next year we're doing this in the flesh. Take care.